The redesigned expression maps in Cubase 15 make articulation control smoother than ever. With streamlined setup, per-articulation attack compensation, and deep integration in both the key editor and score editor, taking control of your sample libraries is easier than ever. Let's dive in. If you've ever used sample libraries like orchestral libraries, you know how useful the expression maps in Cubase can be. And Cubase expression maps now can handle complex orchestral libraries with multiple articulation layers, each in its own group. But before we talk about this, let me show you how you can import an expression map in Cubase 15. So as you can see here, I've loaded up Iconica Sketch with the Celli preset. And if I want to create an expression map using all these different articulations that we have in this library, which is of course included in Cubase, all I need to do is go to my inspector, open my expression maps, and hit plus. Then Cubase is going to bring up this dialog. I can add this expression map. I can name it. In this case, I also want to import the key switches because Cubase has detected that we have key switches in this library. So I hit OK. And straight away, you can see that we have the new expression map setup panel. As you can see here, we have all the different maps that I'm using in this project. And we also have the different sound slots like sustain, staccato, pizzicato, spiccato, and so on and so forth. I can even add sound slots. The add-ons simplify map creation for libraries using consistent CCs or key switches, reducing the need to manually combine articulations and keep maps smaller. One of the biggest workflow improvements that you will find with the new expression maps is the delay compensation. And if you've ever used sample libraries before, you know how tedious this can be. Imagine this, you have a string ostinato and it always lags behind the beat. It's always a little bit delayed. This is a very common issue with many sample libraries. With the new expression maps, you can totally fix this problem. Let me show you. For example, I have this violin part here. And as you can see, it lags a little bit behind the beat. It's not very tight. So what we can do is I can go to my expression map setup and I can select the spiccato articulation in this case. And here what I can do is I can say that for my spiccato, I can change the attack compensation just for this articulation. And what I can do is I can make sure that the notes are going to be sent out earlier to compensate for the attack times. So I'm going to add 25 milliseconds in this case. Let's have a listen. And as you can see, these ostinatos now are much tighter. This doesn't mean that this attack compensation is going to be the same for my pizzicatos, for example. The pizzicatos can have a completely different attack compensation. The same goes for the marcatos, the legatos, all these things. So that means that you can create expression maps for the libraries that you use the most, and each one of the articulations can have their own attack compensation. And this is a huge time saver. And of course, there are other creative ways that you can use these MIDI modifiers right here. For example, I have these second violins here, and maybe I want to use the same MIDI part, but I want them to play in octaves. And as you can hear now, they play the same note, but what I can do is I can go here to my sound slots, I can go to spiccato. Maybe in this case, I want to change the attack compensation a little bit so that they don't play exactly at the same time. And I'm going to transpose 12 semitones higher so we can get this beautiful octave sound. Arranging has never been easier. Here's an example of how the articulations look in the key editor. And as you can see, we have a more streamlined look, which makes arranging much easier. So as you can see here, we have staccato, then I have pizzicato, we have tremolo and legato. And we can also have combinations, for example. Now, if I want to have a cleaner look, I can collapse the groups and I can see the sound slots right here. So I can always see what articulation is going to play at any given point. And if you want to activate the sound slots, the only thing you need to do is make sure you activate the sound slot lane. We've just scratched the surface of what's possible with the new expression maps in Cubase 15. Have fun, and I will see you on the next one.